Officers. Good morning, sir. How are you?
These two related to those shows that March.
Here comes one.
I don't know that they slide. I don't know. See, the table used to be around this way.
Hello, how you doing?
Around this way. To have a board. Talking to each other. Stable without those. Yeah, I don't know where the table came from or what. It's been here. Yes, well, those things happen. No. There's spring flooding I expected. It's dry as it's been. I thought the spring pouring so strong, pouring down there just now. Oh, did you? Good flow. See, I don't know if it's like Yesterday was 339.
I would, I was going to, I just kept forgetting to do it. No, I was just going to go down there and
It is 9 o'clock. We'll open this meeting. I understand that Mr. Sweet is here. Okay, fine. I will give him a few minutes to get here, and then we will start.
They'll save you a seat.
just barely.
Morning, Dee.
Mr. Sweet, don't sit down. We're going to stand up for the invocation and the pledge. Bob Nelson will give the invocation.
Microphone.
Yes, sir, please.
Bow your heads and let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to be here on this beautiful day, in this beautiful location here at Fort Clark Springs, that we may continue to administer this fort in an outstanding way. Lord, be with us. Send your Spirit to be with each one of us. We may do the things that are correct and right for this association. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one flag, under God, indivisible.
Welcome to our rescheduled, annual meeting. The annual meeting consists of mostly informational stuff. I don't know, are you going to want to do this?
Have the annual meeting?
No. Do you want to mention the committees and the nonprofit organizations that we have on the fort? If not, I will.
Mr. Chairman, I stand to point of order.
Excuse me?
I stand to a point of order.
Yes, sir?
You have not read the minutes from last year, and you have not approved the agenda for this year.
What minutes of last year?
We had a meeting last year. There was a minutes taken.
They were read in the next regular meeting last year.
Okay. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
The minutes were read at the following regular meeting.
That wasn't a members' meeting. That was a directors' meeting.
I'm talking about the following monthly meeting. The minutes were read from the annual meeting.
This meeting, the minutes from last year's meeting are to be read, and the agenda is to be approved.
We will go get them.
Thank you.
Were they approved
Yes.
by the board
Yes, they were.
last year?
Yes, they were.
Then we don't have to read them again if they were approved.
Point of order. The membership, this is a membership meeting. They have to be read and approved by the membership meeting. This is not a board.
How can you, the membership has to approve the meeting, the minutes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
How can you do that?
By a vote, by a motion and a second from the membership. We don't have to say the word.
Okay, let's go on to
Following Robert's rules. Another point of order also, we have to establish a quorum before we can have an official membership meeting.
Thank you,
That's
Ann.
only when there is something we voted on.
We have a quorum of the board.
Not a quorum of the board.
It's not a board meeting.
It's a quorum of the membership.
How are you gonna,
Don't.
Point of information. If you'd like to read this, it's in your little handy little book that you'd like to get out and read on page 204, 240.
You wanna read them? Sure. Let's say
here are the minutes from the last annual.
Board of Directors, Fort Clark Springs Association, 41st. Should have been the 42nd. Misprint? Okay. It says 41st, it's a typo. Annual membership meeting minutes, March 31st, 2012. 41st annual membership meeting at the Fort Clark.
That's the wrong minutes.
It is. Yeah, you're right, it is. Sorry.
the date.
No, because it was the 28th. Okay, we'll get those. Let's get on with the meeting.
We'll continue while we get that information.
I have a point of order to make. Due to the vacancy on the board, as per our bylaws, section 316, the runner-up of the last election shall be the director if the board has a vacancy at the time of an annual election. And at the time we would have had an annual election this year, we did have a vacancy, therefore Murray Castle should be the next board member. Our bylaws state that very clearly.
The HOA says something differently.
And we have read this before. It's called Manner of Filling a Vacancy on the Subdivision's Board of Directors. If a nonprofit corporation HOA is a subdivision association, the manner of filling a vacancy on the Board of Directors is governed by both its governing documents and Chapter 209 of the Texas Property Code, which differs slightly from applicable provisions in the Texas Nonprofit Corporation Law. Pursuant to Section 209.00593 of the Texas Property Code, a vacancy on a subdivision association's Board of Directors may only be filled by the affirmative vote of the remaining members of the Board of Directors if the vacancy was caused by a resignation, death, or disability of the former director. In addition, any appointment of a person to fill a vacant position on a subdivision association's Board of Directors in violation of the procedures of Chapter 209 is considered void. Footnote, the director appointed to fill such a vacancy shall serve the unexpired term of such director's predecessor in office.
However, our bylaws are clear on what happens if we have a vacancy at an time of an annual election. If we had a vacancy at the time of the annual election. Therefore, Murray Castle shall be the next board member.
No, the HOA says we appoint one. We did not come up with an appointment. What else can you do? Plus, it's not on the agenda, so let's go forward. We're going to
Another
read
point of
the...
order, we're not done yet. I would like Mr. Earl, who is my legal counsel at this meeting, to state this position.
Sorry. No, sir. I'm sorry. No.
This is a
Members meeting, not a board meeting, sir.
Excuse me, we're running this meeting, not you. Now, hold on, please. Hold on. If you people are gonna continue like this, we're just gonna close this meeting. Now, you know, you wanna have a meeting and you wanna listen, that's fine. If you're not allowed, you know, keep quiet. Keep quiet.
Members, only the membership can vote to adjourn. Members,
Mr. Chairman, I've been asked.
We are adjourning this meeting. We'll take a 15-minute recess and have a regular meeting coming up after that.
During the adjournment, I would like to address the crowd. My name is David Earl. I'm an attorney. I have over 20 years' experience in municipal law, serving as city attorney for 9 cities. Extensive background in homeowner association laws. I've developed my own homeowner association, very familiar with these statutes. There's a common misconception occurring in this association. A lot of times an association believes that this section of the law governing HOAs, called the HOA Protection Act, applies to certain associations when it in fact does not. There is a section 209.003 of the code, entitled Applicability of Chapter. It clearly says, the following provisions of this chapter do not apply to a property owners association that is a mixed-use master association that existed before January 1st, 1974. This association was founded in 1971. As such, my legal research has proven that this association is not governed by the Act and is in fact a typical nonprofit corporation governed by its own bylaws under the state law of the state of Texas and Article 1. In addition, subchapter A of section 209.003, applicability of chapter, states this chapter applies only to a residential subdivision that is subject to restrictions or provisions in a declaration that authorizes the property owners association to collect regular special assessment on all major property owners associations, etc. This is a recreational association by its own terms and conditions. It is not made up strictly of members that own property, homes in the association subdivision. As such, again, this title of the Act does not apply to this association, the Fort Clark Springs Association. And it's not the fault of anyone that misconception occurs, because we've briefed the legislature many times about this issue. Homeowner association management companies have talked about it. There needs to be publication to bring this clarification to the forefront. It's not the fault of the directors that a misunderstanding occurred, but it is a misunderstanding and it is not accurate. You are not governed by the Act. And therefore, during this recess, I appreciate your giving me the opportunity to address the crowd as a lawyer who represents him, just to clear the air and tell you what the truth is. And I'll say no more about the issue unless anyone has a question. Thank you very much.
Yes, I can.
Mr. Roby, since our chairman has decided to illegally close this membership meeting, maybe we can reconvene the meeting without him being present and go ahead with our business on our annual meeting.
I wasn't watching the 15 minutes, but maybe we should give them that.
Well, off the record then, while we're sitting here twiddling our thumbs, parliamentary procedure dictates that to adjourn, a motion is to be made at the end of the meeting. A second to the motion is required. A majority vote is then required for the meeting to be adjourned. And this is of the members.
Excuse me. I kind of wrote a speech, and it might help. So, since we're not really going in order, can I go ahead and just say my speech and then maybe we can adjourn?
No.
That's fine.
I think what we're doing now is not an adjournment, but a recess. It's a different thing.
Take a break.
Mr. Herman, if our lawyer is correct, then I am a board member and I should be seated.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I'm not saying he's wrong, but we have other paperwork that says different. So, you know.
I understand, I guess I am again telling you that I'm willing to serve.
And I'm asking, you're going to allow her?
Where was your section that you looked at in the book?
Let's take a vote.
The section in the book.
The where you referenced that we have to take the next
Point of
one.
order, point of order.
It's,
We have not an established quorum yet. There is no provision in these bylaws that gives a number for the quorum of the membership meeting.
Yes.
Therefore,
10%.
a member of the meeting can ask that we make a motion that the membership meeting be adjourned so that we can't do any business anyway. If there's a second, then you all can decide, vote the membership can decide.
We're gonna have to review this because
are we back in session? Have we done with a recess?
let's bring it back.
Yes, we're back in session.
I would like a moment to read, I think we all should, because I believe, and I could be wrong, that the 10% quorum of voting members, and that means everyone can vote, So you'd have to have 10%, and that's only if there are issues to be voted upon. The agenda does not contain any issues on which action must be taken. There is, however, in the regular meeting, a discussion of a director appointment. And I doubt seriously that since there is nothing in the agenda about anything that needs action taken, then the 10% quorum is not required. If we had a vote on something for the membership, something the membership is required to vote on, then we would require the 10% of all of the voting members on the board. And if you held that every membership meeting, you would never have a membership meeting because we seldom have 250 people at any meeting. But I think that we need to check our governing documents for a couple moments to see what it actually does say.
The agenda hasn't been set yet.
An appointment of the board does not require a vote. It says if a vacancy exists at such time of the annual election of an unexpired term shall be filled by the candidate who is first runner-up to the winner or winners of the annual election. And that was Ms. Castle. She was the next runner-up.
Read it where it talks about death in your bylaws. Death of a director in your bylaws. It directs it.
We didn't have a death.
Yes, you
Yes, you
did.
did. Lee
Lee
Winchell.
Winchell died in December.
Oh, my goodness.
I would like Mr. Earl to address that.
On behalf of my client, as a board member, he had asked me to address this issue. There are two sections pertaining to vacancies. One does allow the board.
You're not the legal counsel for Fort Clark Springs, sir, with all due respect.
With all due respect, I am the legal counsel for one of your board members who asked me to address this board on his behalf. Are you saying I cannot represent my client? Is that your ruling as a DO on record? In violation of my client's constitutional rights? Ma'am, can I have an answer so I know whether to proceed?
I plead the fifth, sir.
Wise choice. My client asked me to address this issue. There are two sections. One is Article 3, one is Article 4. Article 3 deals with vacancies on the board, and it talks about what happens at the time of an annual meeting if there's an annual meeting occurring and an annual vote period occurring, which is every year this vote occurs, this annual vote occurs, or could occur. And it's not set by election year, it's set by annual periods, annual terms, even though a member serves a 3-year term. That section is not discretionary on the part of the board, it is mandatory. It says shall be filled with the next runner-up from the election, period. Article 4, which Jody was talking about, is a discretionary provision. It says in the event of a vacancy, when you're not in that period of time, the board of directors may appoint or
Hold me a second. Mr. Bowman, would you put that phone away, please? Thank you. Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
All right. So there's two different articles within your bylaws. Article 3, dealing with specifically the election of directors by the membership, which is, for lack of a better term, constitutional to your organization. And then Article 4, which is executive branch management of your corporation, dealing with the appointment by the board of a vacancy if there becomes an unexpired term through death, resignation, or removal, and that happens within a period of time that there is not that annual occurrence of an election period. It's my reading of your bylaws that because it occurred during the annual time, that Ms. Castle, with 400 and some odd votes, was the next runner-up, and therefore by operation of law is a director on the board. Doesn't require an action item. It actually becomes the fact of an operation of law de facto.
So how does this HOA come into effect?
You're not an
Look, folks, I'm talking to him, not you, okay? Now, please, let's be calm about this. I asked him a question.
That's a very good question, actually. And the question is, how is the HOA involved in this, the HOA law? And the fact is, as stated earlier, the HOA law, that particular chapter of the Local Government and Property Code, under Chapter 11, does not apply to this institution because this institution was formed in 1971 And that only applies to institutions formed after 1974 by statute. It also does not apply to a mixed-use development. And your development is not a solely residential development. You have on this fort, hotels, multi-purpose use, commercial uses, and by definition of the law itself, this is not a subdivision of a homeowners association or residential subdivision in which the bylaws were formed and the declarations were committed by the developer. That section of the law does not apply to this organization. It's a common misunderstanding. It's no one's fault, but it's clear that it does not. And I've researched this for a considerable amount of time and checked it with case law.
So you're saying this book is useless to us, period?
I'm saying that the homeowners association law book is based on the homeowners association laws of the state of Texas. In the chapter codified to protect homeowners association members and property owners. That book applies to those situations. This is a nonprofit corporation of an association formed in 1971, so no, that book does not apply. If you look at that book about its applicability chapter, you'll read in there these facts, or these statements, that these homeowner association protection laws do not apply to this type of incorporated entity, a nonprofit entity. Rather, the Nonprofit Corporations Act of the state of Texas applies, and your own corporate bylaws and regulatory documents apply. Again, it's a common misunderstanding. So once it's clarified, you can move forward with business and get things accomplished without the frustration and agony that y'all been unfortunately going through.
Okay, got a question?
Okay, so going by our bylaws, Lee Winchell's term was up in 2015. So technically, we are filling his vacancy, which is a death. Okay, so his vacancy would be appointed. You're correct. The board does need to agree. We don't have to take it to an election, only if the board does not agree.
Well, that would be true.
If the person's term is longer than a year, and his term, technically, when he passed away, has been longer than a year. But as an association, I can see why Myrtle Castle, but this wasn't an election year. If it was an election year and say that the person got the election, and then for some reason they were ill or sick, then you go to the next person with the majority of the votes. But since they were filling a vacancy and not an actual election term.
I have it right here.
Ladies and gentlemen.
And I understand your concern, because when I first read this the first 3 or 4 times, I was grappling with the same issue, and then it occurred to me, and I read it again, I realized that section 4 that you're reading from on vacancies, Article 4.
Of a death.
If you look at the previous page, which is your bylaws on page number 4, election and term of office.
Right, but this was not an election year.
I know it's not an election year, but here's the thing. The way your elections work, every single year has an election component, whether someone's running for office or not. Because there's an annual term to the membership, to the actual membership on the board.
Right, and they go for 3 years.
They go for 3 annual consecutive terms.
Correct.
Right.
But it's not a 1 3-year term, it is 3 consecutive terms for 1 year each. That's the way they're written.
Okay.
So every year there is, in February, for example, February 11th there's a particular date, and on April 1st is a particular date. So every year during that time, you reflect back on the last election, and whoever the runner-up was would be put in that place. So that's the way these read, and that's the way it's supposed to operate. And it was very well thought out, because there's 2 different things that can happen. One can be an unexpired term during actually an election year where someone's term expires, the board can then appoint that person. But when it's more than 1 year left, more than 1 annual term in an overall term, the appointment happens mandatorily and automatically. So you don't have a situation where you have a vacancy for a prolonged period of time. And that would be the person who was the last runner-up, because the body of the association spoke at that time, and the next person in line, the runner-up, would be elected automatically, shall be placed on the board. And that is section, on page 8, section 6T. The vacancy, if such exists at the time of the annual election, which That's the time
It
you
didn't.
just. It did.
It was November when he passed away. That's when it was up, but they
But it was
haven't.
not appointed, no one filled the vacancy. So if the board had acted prior to that, it would have been filled, but the board did not.
Right, so
So
it should have
they-
gone to an election. We should have mailed out ballots.
No, you don't have to, because the way, the wisdom of this document prevents you from having to go to the time and expense of mailing out ballots, because what it says is that if the vacancy exists at the time of the annual election, which is a recurring annual process time, of an unexpired term, it shall be filled by the candidate who is first runner-up to the winner or winners of the annual election. These bylaws gave this body, this board, the opportunity to fill that vacancy prior to that time. But because it did not, the vacancy still exists during the annual term for the election period. And as such, you don't have to have another election. You reflect back on the last heroic event you undertook to have an election, and the last runner-up becomes the filled office holder. And that's the way this reads. It says, the vacancy of such exists at the time of the annual election. The annual election is defined as a period automatically occurring every year for the purpose of holding an annual election. You may not have one that year, but if you come to that period of time and that vacancy still exists, then it shall be filled by the candidate who is the first runner-up to the winner or winners of the annual election. In the event that there is more than one unexpired term to be filled, the longest unexpired term shall be awarded to the first runner-up, and the next longest unexpired term awarded to the second runner-up. And that's basically how it works.
So if we have a divided board and something happens to someone, then the board can write it out till the following election?
This is what helps you keep that from happening, because if you have an unexpired term and the board can't come together on appointing a replacement, like happened here, the bylaws prevent that deadlock from continuing by saying you go back and the person who's the last runner-up becomes the board member. No deadlock. Otherwise, the board can't operate and do its annual functions throughout the year, filing its tax renditions, taking care of things on rewarding contracts and maintaining the grass, whatever it is. You've got to do business. And if the board is deadlocked and it cannot do it on its own, these bylaws say that at that time period, if you haven't appointed a director by that annual time, automatically that is filled by the person who's the last runner-up. It doesn't take away your power, it just puts a time limit on you exercising your power. So there prevents there from being a situation where you have to either be in a stalemate the whole time, because you have two parts of democracy that can't agree, or you have to wait till another, full another time and you go through the expense of another election when you have one. And you have a runner-up that can take that position if they're willing to serve, and I understand she is. And it's really something to help it. It's not something to control anyone or take away from anyone's power. The power can be exercised, but because you're a Democratic board, and this is the way it works, if there's not a majority of the votes, you can't fill it the way you want to, or one side wants to, another side wants to. This takes care of it by saying, hey, without caring which side you're on, the voters, the members that voted the last election, and that next runner-up was agreed to by the majority of those voters, and therefore they'll take the spot, take that pressure off of you, and let's get on with business. That's kind of the way it's designed to work.
No, thank you.
You bet.
No, I'm
Sure.
I'm hoping that the members can we talk it along?
Because you get, like Rob, just get along. Because you've been in a very difficult situation because of the executive director, so to speak, of the organization.
No, that's Jody.
Oh, that's Jody. How can you do your job when your governing board can't come to agreement because there's two different opinions, basically? And that's healthy. That's democracy. That makes sure there's a check and balance. So one side doesn't totally overrun the other. And there's majority rules and minority rules. But this keeps there from being that deadlock continuing by saying, hey, the membership at the last election, no matter what side you're on, all voted. And this person was the next person in line with the most number of votes. So you put that person on the board. Otherwise, you couldn't do business for up to a year. So that's the way it works. I'm not here to try to push myself in your situation. I was asked to look at it. That's what I do. That's my background. I did that. And I'm just offering you what the law says and what your rules say to help you become a cohesive community and move forward with good business and make this place prosperous.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Any question?
I have a question.
Okay, there. Thank you.
Excuse me, have we open discussions?
Well, yeah, she asked a question, I'll allow him to ask one.
Still a member of the meeting.
Members meeting.
I have a question.
I have a question for the attorney.
Y'all,
Let
Well-
Dan go first, if you would, please. He raised his hand, so.
The last appointed director we had was in 2012, for a term that ran until the election of 2015. According to our bylaws, that appointment should have been valid for that portion of the term that was less than a full annual term. And then an election should have filled for the remaining 2 years. So if the HOA law, which allowed them to make that appointment for nearly a whole 3 years, if that does not apply, then it would seem to me that that appointment became invalid in March of 2013, when we got the results of that election.
that's a possibility. I've not looked at that. I could look at it, but that's a possibility, although I would caution you this. There's probably a lot of business that occurred after that. And if that business occurred by virtue of one vote and it was that person's vote, the risk you run, even though legally you may be right, I've not looked at that particular election or that issue, but the risk you run is that a lot of things could be put in flux or be undone that were done that were beneficial. And so what I would advise in that situation is your next annual meeting to ratify the action of the board, appointing that director for that term, so that you don't have a situation where that occurs. Now, if not a lot of business was done, then it doesn't matter, and you'd go back and look at that and see is that right or not, and then execute on that according to the law. But you always have the right to ratification of the membership of a decision of the board in that instance to protect against any unanticipated negative consequences.
The
Excuse me.
Texas Business
Mr. Hahn,
Code.
Mr. Hahn, please. There was other people in front of you. Let's do, if you're gonna do this, I don't like this, but if we're gonna do this, let's do this according to the people's who had requested I had a question.
Mr. Bowman.
I have a question. What happens theoretically after you leave and the management and the board continues to operate under the guise of being a homeowners association?
I don't know if that will occur, but if it did occur, every member by right has a right to seek enforcement of the laws, and that enforcement can be done through the proper channels. And you would be able to get a equitable relief to prevent that from occurring until a court of the proper jurisdiction could decide. Or you could have a special meeting called by a petition of 400, available members entitled to a vote. So if you get 400 people to sign a petition, then there'd be a special meeting in which you could, by membership, address those issues. The latter is probably less expensive than the former. The former usually involves hiring lawyers and going to the courthouse, and that's never profitable if you can avoid it. It's profitable for the lawyers, but not for anybody else. So
You're suing yourself.
yeah, so if you can avoid it, the best thing to do, I would suggest, is to do a petition and get the votes and have a special meeting, take care of your business, and not involve the court system or lawyers unnecessarily. But if that can't be done, then you do have the legal remedies, as any member would have, no matter what side you're on.
What happens if they continue to file liens under being a homeowners association?
Same thing.
Isn't that solicitation of funds to a non-existent entity?
I think we're getting off topic here, are we not,
It is an
sir?
existing entity, they do have a right to enforce their assessments.
Let's get back on topic here, please.
Thank you.
You agree that we are under the Business Organizations Code for nonprofit corporations?
I believe you are.
That code also requires that a vacancy that was filled serves out the term.
That code also says that if you have a set of bylaws that are approved by the Secretary of State, there's a conflict between those bylaws, which are more stringent or more protective, or the code, I believe you'll see that code says that those bylaws prevail.
Okay.
But it's created, that code has those provisions as default provisions. So in the event that a nonprofit corporation was loosely formed and didn't have the right provisions in it, the provisions are there for them to fall back on to operate according to law. But it's a good point.
Okay, we'll have to,
Do we have another question there?
you have a question for the lawyer? Okay, last what?
Stand up.
Is there any chance of any legal repercussions against the board or the board for things that they have made under, decisions they have made under a homeowners association, such as putting liens on property or selling property and stuff like that?
I'm not going to, I don't want to put this body in jeopardy of liability, and I've not been asked by my client to address that issue. I'm here to give general advice. My client has to ask me that question or I can't address it. At this point, I don't represent the association, I represent my client only.
Thank you, sir.
So I,
Thank you.
Based on conversation, we will take this to our official lawyers and have them review what was said, and then we'll go from there. And thank you for interesting conversation, sir. Appreciate it.
Who are our official lawyers, as you said? I asked that question before and got no answer.
Yeah, we want to know who are they?
Langley and Benak and Tully Shahan, you know that.
No.
Well,
That's who it
Let's
is.
say it one more time. Langley and Benak and Tully Shahan.
Okay. The minutes of the last annual meeting.
Board of Directors, Fort Clark Springs Association, Inc., 42nd Annual Membership Meeting Minutes, March 30th, 2013. And actually, I think it was, yes, right. The 42nd Annual Membership Meeting of the Fort Clark Springs Association, Inc. was held Saturday, March 30th, 2013 at the Post Theater, Fort Clark Springs, Kinney County, Texas. President Lee Winchell called the meeting to order at 10 a.m. with the following board members present. Vice President Ralph Salade, Secretary Roby Roberson, Treasurer Garland Young, and Board Director Sandy Hagan. Also present was Director of Operations Jody Stevens, several staff members, and a number of Fort Clark Springs Association members. Invocation, delivered by Pastor Joe Cosen, was followed by the Pledges of Allegiance, led by Gwen Hay and Paul Woody. Welcome and introduction. President Winchell welcomed those in attendance and introduced himself. Board Director Hagan, Vice President Salade, Secretary Roberson, Treasurer Young, Director of Operations Stevens. Following the introduction of the current board, President Winchell introduced the 2013 nominated board candidates, Myrna Castle, Bill Herman, Jack Howard, and B.E. Sweet. Approval of the minutes. Roberson moved to approve the 2012 annual meeting minutes as read. Motion was seconded. The motion carried with all in favor. Financial report reported by Randy Galloway. Profit for the past year was $137,800. Last year at this time, there was a loss of $283,333, which is a difference of $421,000. Part of the reason for the increased profit is due to a board-approved special assessment that profited $111,000. Another reason is due to the canceling of the employees' health coverage, which saved Fort Clark Springs, Inc. between $170,000 and $180,000. So $280,000 to $290,000 of the profit is due to those two issues. The association has $455,500 in the bank. There is not a current number for our debt ratio this year. Last year's debt to equity ratio was for every $4 of equity, there was $1 of bad debt. He recommended a 6% increase for bad debt allowance at March's meeting due to the state of the economy, which was approved. Without the 6% increase, the profits for the year would have dropped to $200,258. He stated that it's hard to increase profit when we are losing members, and the association has lost a couple of hundred members over the last few months. Mr. Galloway also reported that the outstanding accounts receivable have been increasing over the past several years. State of the Association, presented by Jody Stevens. Stevens highlighted moving to the next phase by marketing our history and gaining membership. In the future, a survey would be organized to give members a platform to share their opinions. Health insurance for employees would be investigated in the near future. Stevens also gave a financial report for the last 5 months. Committee recognition. Vice President Salade presented the committee recognition. The committees recognized were architectural, recreation, RV, golf, preservation, community council, recycling, and Fort Clark Days. Employee recognition presented by Jody Stevens. Employees recognized for motel and housekeeping staff, Mary Rivas, Chata Meza, Rachel Latimer, Rosa Del Real, and Sylvia Flores. Presentation Member of the Year, Treasurer Garland Young presented the Member of the Year Award to Brian Gresty. Recognition of outgoing directors presented by Secretary Roby Roberson. Outgoing directors were Garland Young and Ralph Salade. Secretary's report, election result. Pat Bowers from the auditing firm of Glenn, Graff, and Bowers in Del Rio, Texas. Bowers read the results. Official number of ballots mailed through 3,769. Official ballots received 1,427. Official number of ballots countable 1,064. Official number of ballots received past the deadline 2. Official undeliverable as addressed returned envelopes 339. Official ballots uncountable 22. William Herman 525. B. Sweet 645. Myrna Castle 463. Jack Howard 459. Write-in candidate Bill Hahn 1. Swearing in ceremony. Director Hagan administered the oath of office, officially swearing B. Sweet and Bill Herman. Director Winchell announced immediately following the conclusion of the annual meeting, the member luncheon would be served at the Service Club, the museum. The end of the month golf tournament would begin at 1 p.m. The Easter egg hunt would begin at 2 p.m. at the Par 3, and the Old Quarry Society would present their melodrama at 7:30 p.m. at the Post Theater. Meeting adjourned at 10:45 a.m. Signed, Sandy Hagan, Secretary, Lee Winchell, President.
Do I have a motion to approve last annual meeting minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
There is one question I'm curious about. The number of votes awarded to Myrna Castle versus Mr. Howard. As I recall, Mr. Howard came in last.
Yeah, so it was read, they weren't read in count order, they were just read.
I will read them in order again.
Myrna Castle's had more votes than Howard.
I will read them.
Well, okay.
Let me just read them in order again, okay? B. Sweet, 645. Bill Herman, 525. Myrna Castle, 463. Jack Howard, 459. Bill Hahn, write-in, 1.
Okay? Okay. Let's try again. So I have a motion to approve last year's annual meeting minutes.
It's already on the floor.
A motion was already made and seconded.
Don't we have to do that?
No.
It's a membership.
Oh, come on, please, you know.
Please, let's be polite and courteous to one another.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion, you made a motion.
You're supposed to repeat the motion.
Hey, quiet.
You're the presiding officer.
Calm down. Calm down.
Mr. Garcia has a
Just
comment.
clarification, is this a board member, is this a board meeting or a membership meeting?
Membership.
Then I raise the point of order. You have not established a quorum of the membership meeting if that's what you're following. Because you don't have the number of members present, is the way I understand
I believe the
Yeah.
board is the one that approves the minutes.
it.
All
That's what's been all along.
It's been that way for
members are present on
It's already,
read at the
it's,
board.
they've already been actually.
From last year, the board are the ones that accepted it. It wasn't the members.
Okay, I'm going to read this again. Approval of minutes. Roberson moved to approve the 2012 annual meeting. That's the 2012. We're talking about 2013. But this is, all right, this is the precedent, ladies and gentlemen. Roberson moved to approve the 2012 annual meeting minutes as read. The motion was seconded. Motion carried with all in favor. Precedent is if the board approves the minutes. I'm just reading what's here.
A member should be, a members approve or disapprove any decision taken.
We are,
Again, you haven't read section 5.9 of your little book there, page 240. That clears all that up.
That book doesn't apply. We've been
We don't use that book now.
I will read it, because.
However, we could have a vote of membership to approve it, just restate the motion, and they'll vote. We have to restate the motion.
We need to.
well, the board approved the minutes last year, so shouldn't the board approve them again?
If we vote by the with the membership,
Your members, you can vote.
It's the minutes from 2013's business. Thank you.
All those in favor of approving last year's board meeting minutes, please, annual meeting minutes, please signify by raising your hand.
All right.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now,
I have a point of order.
let's do this. How about we do this, so we make sure we're covering all our bases? Now the board, how about the board approving the minutes, so that we know whether it's right or wrong?
Ladies and gentlemen, please.
You know, folks, we're trying to conduct business here, and we're trying to cover our bases to make sure we're doing it right. You've approved the minutes. Let us approve them also in case there's a problem. How's that sound?
Didn't you vote with the membership? It's ridiculous.
No, I did not. I didn't vote with the membership.
Stop.
Will you please? Is that agreeable to you? So we make sure we're covered, that we don't have to go back 5 months from now and say, oh, you didn't do it right?
Yeah, I voted with the membership, so I'm a member of the board.
Well, let's do it as supposedly a board, so that we, because we have a board.
Sorry, no. Point of order again, we just had a statement that we have no official forum. In order to have an official forum, we have to have mail-in ballots sent in from the membership. They were not sent out, therefore we cannot have a forum, and we actually cannot do any type of business in this meeting. I called for adjournment earlier.
A ballot for what?
A ballot, the bylaws state that the quorum is established by the return of the ballot envelope. It doesn't matter if it's a ballot or if you just wrote it out there and said, please return it. We did not send them out, therefore we cannot have a quorum. And I made the motion earlier that we could adjourn the meeting, but I'm glad it didn't carry because I was happy to hear what the Lord had to say. So we're actually in a visiting mode of a meeting.
Well, let's go on. The minutes have been approved from last year.
I would like to call for a point of order. I would like, Ms. Stevens smartly remarked that Langley and Benak and Tully Shahan were our lawyers. Where is the resolution and when was it passed that was an action item and the board voted on it?
Would you like to put that on the agenda? We'll discuss that, but this is not on the agenda, so we can talk personally later.
The agenda has been approved.
Oh, great, then I don't have to talk about it, do I?
Oh, come on, folks. Let's stop nitpicking back and forth here. Let's go on. The minutes of the last annual meeting were approved, okay?
Yeah.
Now let's continue with the annual meeting.
I would like to raise a point of order to what she said.
That has nothing to do with the annual meeting at this time.
Okay.
That's all, you know.
We're not in there any meeting right now.
Yes, we are.
Okay, Okay, the annual, but not the board of director meetings.
Yes. And according to our agenda on the annual meeting, the volunteers of the year was given to,
Again, I stand up point of order, Chairman. Regardless of whether it's an annual meeting, a director's meeting, or any kind of meeting, you have to approve the agenda before you can apply the agenda. You have to approve it. And if it's not approved, then you make it approvable. You ask people, what do you want on the agenda? It's a members' meeting.
this is after the fact, the meeting is already in progress.
I made that statement before the meeting ever started. After the,
Where?
In the beginning, after the pledge. After the pledge.
Why? Okay.
I was going to say, if you can't run a meeting, maybe you should step down and let someone who knows how to run a meeting.
We are following the agenda that was posted.
You're not following the law.
We're following the agenda that was posted, which we have been doing for 43 years.
That's an proposed
We have not
agenda. and the
established
members
form,
have to
therefore
go
we
through
cannot
it.
have a proper meeting.
So somebody find the definition of a quorum. Somebody find me the definition.
Well, according to, we had a quorum for, well, again, I don't know. Do we have a quorum? Do we ever have a quorum? I know.
I got it. I don't know if anybody else did, but I got it.
Would you like to say something, ma'am?
It doesn't define a quorum. It's just a direct.
Marcy, you have something to say?
This is an annual meeting, right? The annual meeting, you approve the prior fiscal year's business, which is the minutes, and all the stuff that happened. You call out any officers that may be elected or taking over a spot or whatever you want to call it, right? They have to be sworn in, they're not part of the people until they're sworn in. Officers have to be re-elected, because that's what happens between the annual meeting and barbecue or, whatever that is. Okay? So, if Marla's gonna take it, you have to swear her in. She takes the board, y'all do your election on who does what part, and then you're done with that part. All right, but this is not a business meeting. You cannot make any decisions based on business.
We're not making any decisions based on business.
I'm saying that for everybody else.
Okay.
Okay, because, if we're gonna do the annual meeting, it has to be recorded, the minutes, obviously. This is something that you have to keep in your files, okay? So do the annual meeting, and then you address different businesses. The election thing has been settled. Okay? And there should be election of officers. Yeah, and the election of officers and all that stuff.
Well, we are going to take under advisement what the lawyer had said.
But it has nothing to do with your bylaw.
Well,
You
that,
have to do it, right?
if we're gonna take under advisement what the lawyer says and check it out through our official lawyers, then the position remains as is for now. That's all we're saying. Once we find out where we have to go, we want to look into it. If we find out what's right, we can have, if we have to, a special board meeting to take care of business on that.
So you're looking into whether or not the next person, okay, 1 year,
All we're gonna say is, based on what he said, whether it's, we're gonna ask our official lawyers if it's correct. That's all we're saying. Look, don't we have the right to do that? That's all. If we find out that he is correct in his statements, then we will have to call a special meeting.
We're gonna do this again.
No, we'll call a special board meeting and either Myrna becomes the next board member or she doesn't. That's all we'll have to find out. That's all we're gonna do. Okay? So we're not conducting business right now.
That's what I'm saying, we're real different things.
Now,
Someone has to be sworn in at the annual meeting. It has to be on record to file. So next year, you're gonna have to face it again, that's the way it works. That's the way it works.
no, we're filling a vacancy, not a vote vacancy.
It has to fill.
We're gonna ask the lawyer, okay?
All we're saying, ladies and gentlemen.
That's all we're saying. We're gonna ask the lawyers.
He's not the court's attorney, okay? We are going to be taking his information, which we greatly appreciate, because as he said, this is a common misinterpretation of the law. And we want to make sure we're doing it correct, so we're going to take what he said under advisement, and we're going to discuss it. Now, if you recall, last year, year before, an individual from Langley came and talked to us about the homeowners association. And at that time, told us that we were bound by the new law. So we have a conflicting opinion between Mr. Roby's personal attorney and the fort's attorney when the law was first presented to us.
Let's call him and get him on the phone.
It's Saturday. I'm sorry. We have to also give him everything that he can listen in.
If he's a Ford attorney, he should be here. Get him on the phone.
Excuse me, ma'am, it's Saturday. Oh, come on now, let's be reasonable. Now, we're going to take it under advisement, and if Mr. Roberson's attorney is correct, then obviously we have some changes that we have to make. If we find that the interpretation is not the same, and we can check with the Attorney General's office also if necessary, then we'll have to go from there. All we're saying is that we have a gentleman who is very informative and very helpful today, let us know things that we weren't aware of, and we're going to give it to our attorney and let him take that under advisement, and then we'll let you know what he comes up with. Obviously, if we, along with apparently from what the attorney said, other associations have misinterpreted this, fine, then we'll have to take it from there. But we were told a year and a half, 2 years ago by our own attorney that we were bound by these laws. So we have to straighten that out. Okay? Now, it would be very nice if we could finish this meeting and get to the general meeting on the regular agenda, which is where we were going to discuss the appointment of a board member. It's not on this agenda. So we just kind of like to move this along, and I know everybody wants to get out of here before 5 o'clock tonight.
Point of order. I moved that the meeting be adjourned several times. This is my third time. It was a very informative meeting. I enjoyed every bit of the dialogue between members, board members, and the attorney. And that's my motion.
Second.
Meeting be adjourned.
Second.
Second.
Point of order. I believe what you're talking about, two different things here. The homeowners part of it was read from the law. The appointment of Myrna Castle was read from our bylaws. And I do believe that all four of you took an oath of office to abide by the declaration and the bylaws. Did you not?
That's true, and the book,
Unless
it's
state or federal law supersedes.
There you go.
We need to,
It doesn't prohibit you from appointing it.
we need to address the motion that's on the floor, made and seconded. It needs to be called for a vote.
Yep. All in favor of adjourning this annual meeting? Signify by raising your hand. All opposed? Okay, annual meeting is adjourned. We will take a 15-minute recess to convene our regular board meeting.
There's an article, yesterday was the 339th anniversary of the first match in
Nowhere does it establish a quorum for meetings of
It's not in the beginning, where it says it doesn't. That's just what it
so afraid of you. You're a sweet lady.
The board has still made it. That's the lawyers yet. Unless they want to spend more money.
His attorney cannot.
Well, you can.
When others have the right to be, board's obligation to file and foreclose on accessory is mandatory. Page 4, to file and foreclose on accessory.
What is that about the deeds and everything? We're not gonna go over that today?
Apparently not, because it was on the agenda for the membership. And there was going to be a presentation from Brianna to discuss about what the memberships are and why we have inactive status for our membership. And that's what she was going to bring up.
I thought, we have a deed, because I've seen it in the courthouse, so not everybody does?
No, everybody's got it. Everybody's got it.
Well, it says over here, look, that they need deeds. A bunch of them don't.
That means we need deeds that are given back to the fort, because those are areas that can never be built on.
Oh.
Individuals right and want to give freedom of speech, give them their own column and claim the rhetoric as your own. If you have a pet project, something that is near and dear to you, say line dancing or putting RV pads or having an adult center open 24/7, come up with ideas to help with a cost, like bake sales, RV park dances from 6 to 10. The adult center's electricity for the month of April was over $900. It wasn't that cold or hot. Help figure out a way to raise money to maybe put solar panels. We have a lot of smart people here. We just need to put our heads together and get along. Board meetings need to be conducted in a professional manner, using parliamentary procedure. I saw an individual storm to the front of the members to address the board and address that she did not receive emails. This was in regards to the first annual meeting. This year, I was a little confused because she might not have received an email, but I know for a fact she was at the meeting because I have her signature on the 43rd annual meeting sign-in sheet. Then there was the reading and discussion of the statement of authority to transfer rural property. I would like to say, if you are a board member and a member asks you a question about something, you please call and ask. These meetings are recorded and are a representation of the fort. If I had no idea about the fort or wanted to see if I would like to move here and watch some of these board meetings, I would be very leery of coming here. So back to this document. Fort Clark Springs has lots and foreclosed lots and structures for sale. These properties have memberships attached to them. When a buyer wants an owner's policy on the property, it has to go through a title company. The title company has certain conditions that need to be met to insure the property. One document they need is a document showing who can sign on behalf of the association. This form saves the association $200 or whatever an attorney will charge for doc preparation fee, as a blanket document with limitations of transactions under $25,000. This document does not give access to sell Dickman Hall, the swimming pool, nothing unless it has a membership number attached to it and is in the association's name. Now, the last meeting jumped ahead about foreclosures. This board, as per Texas homeowners law, or whatever we gotta do, needs to appoint a trustee to exercise the power of sale. The last example we have as a board appointing was in 2011. In the minutes, order under discussion, consideration, appointment of trustee for foreclosure, Bill Hahn moved to appoint Rod Stewart, Director of Operations, as trustee to act on behalf of the associations as it relates to foreclosures. The motion was seconded and carried with all voting in favor. Hattie Burless stated that the trustee had to be the registered agent for the association. So with that said, this discussion and appointment needs to be put on an agenda so the association can start cleaning up some lots around here. I would like to close with some food for thought and modify a famous quote by President Kennedy. Ask not what your association can do for you, but what you can do for your association. None of us can take this place with us when we die, but the time you were here, did you help or did you hurt? When you walk into a room, do you notice people coming towards you to seek your wisdom, or do you notice people looking for the exit? How sad it would be to me to know this place is better off now that I am gone. That would not be a legacy I would want or would want for my children. I hope as I stand here you see my heart, and I hope the criticism is taken constructively and not personally. Fort Clark Springs is a gym, and we all have good in us. We just need everyone to see that side. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rihanna. Excuse me. Too many R's.
In reference to Ms. Hayes' letter, that cleaning up of the lot sales is something I wish to start when I first got on the board, and we're considering on doing it. But it's really a big rock around the fort's neck. That's something we have to work on diligently to be able to get control of the fort. You know, to be able to get control of the property, to turn it into green space, to use it for anything. And all that bad debt that we're carrying around with it is a rock around our neck. I mean, we've just got to get rid of it somehow. I'm not sure how you can write it all off and just get rid of the deeds, but there has to be a legal procedure to do it. And I'm sure it's not fast, but we really have to endeavor to work on that.
Well, I think part of what Rihanna's doing is exactly that. And, you know, it's kind of stuff that she's sitting in a cubbyhole office working on that we don't see, but it's appreciated. Okay. Committee and organization reports. Architectural? Oh, we got two. Go ahead, Glenn.
Okay, we had.
You the man.
We had 9 requests for building permits. We tabled one for lack of evidence, lack of information. We approved it. We had one that we outright denied because it was illegal, what they wanted to do. We had 2 extensions on permits that had run out and they requested extension. We sent out one letter advising the person that they were about to run out. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Golf.
There was not a quorum, so there was not a meeting.
Thank you. Preservation. I think Garland is on emergency bereavement leave. Community council.
I can't yell that.
Howdy, I'm Steve Giblin, Vice President of Community Council. How y'all doing? Good. Community Council met last Saturday, May the 10th at 10 o'clock. You should have been there. We had a lively discussion with respect for other people's opinions, and some people's opinions got changed after they looked at other people's opinions and thought about it, and then added some comments of their own. And when we left, we felt like we accomplished something. Can you imagine that? Some of the items we discussed was bingo restarting September 26th. Also, 2 $500 scholarships are heading over to 2 students selected from six applicants to be awarded on May 22nd over at the high school. We had an update from Garland Young on the Preservation and Restoration Society and where they are in that endeavor and where they want to go with it. And there also was some discussion about a possible use of the back gate we have down there at the end of the road past the RV park, maybe for the larger RVs that want to knock that shingle off the security shack, maybe for the larger ones to use that back gate instead of trying to come through the front. One thing people are really excited about is our next community council meeting. We're going to have Philip Garcia, head of maintenance, to speak to us, and we encourage you to bring any of your questions or concerns to that meeting and speak right to the man on that. That'll be on June 14th. Also at that meeting, there'll be a discussion on the future of Fort Clark Days as it relates to community council. These are some of the things we discussed, but the two big and most lengthy and most lively discussions were, number one was the garage sales here on Fort Clark Springs. And pointed out to us that some of these are weekly garage sales at the same residence every week, which we feel like constitutes running a business out of your home. And during these garage sales, usually Saturdays, it's kind of a wide open security gate policy to customers who are going to these basic retail outlet garage sale stores on the fort. We've got some addresses on this, and I've been out of town all week, but I'm going to turn this over to security and to administration and have them take a look at this. If this is a violation, which it certainly appears to be. Some remedies on this situation, just for thought, is, and they may have done this in the past, I've been here for 5 or 6 years, is maybe a possible twice a year or even an annual Fort-wide garage sale, and just get it done on one weekend, and after that, there just won't be. And we'd also like to get a ruling from now bylaws, HOA, XYZ, whoever's in control now on how often a resident can have a garage sale. Maybe it says they can have one every week. I just don't know. Second topic, community council members who were present at that meeting had a very, very strong concern on the lack of a fifth member of this board of directors. Our suggestion on that, we're asking the directors to reopen the interview process to find a fifth board member. This was before I heard from the lawyer this morning, if this applies. If it doesn't, let's go with what does apply. We feel like we need that fifth member. See, from where we're sitting out there, it looks so incomplete here. And we know that somewhere the best interests of the fort have been put back on the back burner, and we want to see it, brought to the fore. See, this is a board of directors meeting we're sitting in right now. The community meeting is on the second Saturday of every month at 10 o'clock, where everybody in the room is a board of directors. And our job is to take those concerns, which we've been doing, to where it needs to go, whether it be administration, board of directors, director of operations, people in the office up here, security. We don't always get the answer we want, but we feel like we're doing our job. We took the collective voice of those who were there on that Saturday morning, who spoke for the community as best we know because they were present at the meeting, and we took the concerns where it needed to go. That's our board of directors meetings there. Rhiannon's right. I drive up here. I live on the last house on the block, literally. And I got to drive through the whole fort on the way up here to this, and this is a beautiful place. I agree. And I'd like to think that to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, that the best interests of the fort, I think, are number one in our hearts here. I really do. I just not going to believe otherwise. And I know we go left and right sometimes away from that main purpose. But I think we do want to see this stay the beautiful place it's always been. I wish I'd have found it many, many years ago. I truly do. And I look around this room, I know some of you guys were in some strong positions in some very big companies, including myself, and we're talking about a $2 million budget that we seem to have trouble with. There's companies represented in this room, $2 million was the budget for the office supplies. I know that. So I just can't believe that we can't put our collective heads, and God, there's some smart people in this room, and some captains of industry and retired military that are used to making some big, big decisions. And I'd like to see us all put our heads together and come up with the best interests of this sport. Maybe we're too smart. Maybe you're too smart. I know I'm not. But I still believe it can be done. thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll see you next month, and we'll have some more lively discussions with respect to other people's opinions and wide open minds. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, appreciate it. And recycling, this past week, we sent out 24 Gaylords, and we already had 5 we had to keep back because of what we were allowed to put in the truck. So recycling is going good. So again, like I've always said before, bring us your junk, trash, so we can keep, and you know, recycling, whether it makes money or not, is keeping the landfill from being filled up, and we have to make new ones all the time. Okay.
I would like to interject something there with Steve's comment about the budgets and the amount of people we have on this fort that have controlled budgets that the office supplies were $2 million. I mean, it's not, there's a lot of very skilled people on this fort. And early on, I proposed that we have some steering committees, whatever you want to call them, to assist the board and things like that. Groups of concerned individuals on the fort that have expertise and abilities in different areas, advertise them, budgetary, whatever it happens to be. A lot of people here have a lot of skills they spent 30 or 40 years developing in industry that collectively would be a great asset to the fort. And then on the budget, I have some questions on the, we still don't have a year to date or comparison to last year's budget numbers. We were told that was going to happen at some point in time. Is that still?
We can get that to you.
Okay. Item number 7, discussion, approval of the appointment of the architectural committee members. Do I have a motion to discuss the approval of the architect committee members?
So moved.
Do I have?
Second.
Second? Any? Okay. Open for discussion.
How were the members, how was the terms advertised? I mean, how did people know to apply?
The people that were on the committee or who are on the committee expressed a desire to continue.
But it wasn't offered to anybody else?
Doesn't have to be.
Well, it may not have to be, but it would be the thing to do.
Well, we did it. It says that they can continue for another term. And the 3 people who expressed a desire to continue are Glenn White, Phyllis Giblin, and Aileen Reed.
Do we have any indication that anyone else showed any interest in being on the architectural committee?
No, and that's all I would ask for. If someone else did, they should be thrown in there too.
Well,
I have no trouble with those people there. They've done a wonderful job thus far. However, when their term is up, if anybody else displays desire to be on there, I think they should be considered as well.
That's
That's
fine.
up to the architectural committee to actually do that. Put together the names of the people who want to be on.
Usually by committee itself usually solicits replacement people. And they didn't have to do that because they had the people who just, you know, wanted to remain.
I think it would, I think it would only be fair to solicit other people if they were interested. If they're not, that's great.
Well, but we didn't have a need to replace anybody because the board was going to remain. It's just that they have to be approved by year.
I don't think that's fair to the membership. There may not be anybody else that desires to be on there. We may be fortunate that these 3 people are the ones that want to remain, because we may never have any others.
Well, I don't know if anybody expressed a desire. I don't know, Mr. White, has anybody come to you and asked you?
No.
They didn't hear you.
They're supposed to apply for the board. not a.
Okay, well, that's fine. I didn't get any.
Why don't we table this till next meeting and see if we can find some other people that might want to serve on there?
I think for that matter, the architectural committee then would remain the same. We're announcing it right now that if those who are interested in being on the architectural committee should submit their names. And we'll table this until the next meeting.
But the people who are on this committee and the people whose term is up will still remain on the board until,
That's correct. Until they're approved by the board or
Right.
approved one way or another.
The architectural committee members will not change until we learn whether anybody else is interested or not. It'll stay the same until it changes.
That's correct.
and for your information, these are one-year terms, so you can keep that in mind if a year from now you decide you want to run. Okay.
Okay, well then I move that we suspend action on this for 1 month and allow members to submit their names and we'll, for approval at the next board meeting.
I'd second that.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next item up is discussion. Texas Historical Marker application. Do I have a motion to discuss the Texas Historical Marker application?
I move that we give permission to the state of Texas to allow them to.
That's not what I asked.
We may have some questions.
I have to open it for discussion. That's what we're gonna do first. Okay?
I move that we open it for discussion.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Yes, the fort only has to give permission to the state of Texas to put this marker on their property. It's a marker from a guy that was at John Horse that was ambushed down here by the the original Fort Cemetery. And 2 guys were ambushed, 1 was killed, the other survived. They're very intrinsic to the fort's history, and the only obligation we have is to give permission to the state of Texas that they can put that marker on private property.
Yeah, do we anticipate any future expense or liability? In other words, do we have to, if the sign becomes damaged, are we responsible for paying for a new one? Or do we have to pay for any upkeep or permissions or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm with Sandra. I have no problem other than to know if there is any liability or obligation to the fort that we don't know about. That's all I wanted to find out.
I'm sure there isn't, but Mr. Hahn can.
I understand that. I understand that, but my question, that was why I wanted to discuss it. You know, and if we can get Mr. Hahn to give us the procedure, and my other question would be, and Mr. Hahn again could answer this, if this was, did he already apply for the marker and got permission to do it, and now he's asking the fort for permission to put it up, or is he at the beginning saying, okay, I'm getting fort permission, and now I'm going to apply? That's all I want to know.
I'm following the same procedure that I did last year on the Los Morris Spring marker, that I got no response whatsoever from the board of directors on the marker application. The marker application cannot be submitted without the property owner's signature. So I don't do things.
That's fine. Well, that's what I wanted.
backwards
Right, I
and then
understand.
come and try to get it done correctly.
I understand that. That's why I asked the question.
This marker is free. If it is approved, last year there were 63 statewide applications for this marker program. 14 were selected. Los Morris Spring was one of them. So our application will compete statewide and be reviewed by a committee of the Texas Historical Commission, who will decide which subjects merit funding under the Undertold Stories program, and marker application funds are used to pay for the marker. Every marker application in the state of Texas has a $100 non-refundable application fee. Since 2006, that money has gone into a fund which have funded the cost of markers statewide under the Undertold Stories program. This marker, we have one on the fort, and that's at the 2nd Cavalry Division marker. There's one in the city of Brackenville at the Carver School, and there's one that we will have hopefully by the end of the year for Los Morris Spring. These markers now cost $1,700. They are the property of the state of Texas. So if the marker is the property of the state of Texas, that should satisfy your question of zero liability on the part of Fort Clark Springs Association. And as Mr. Roberson so correctly stated, the state of Texas is asking the applicant, which is the Friends of the Fort Clark Historic District, has the property owner given permission to install this marker on their property. Now, because last year I could get no response from the Board of Directors, I went to Fort Clark Mud. And Fort Clark Mud signed the application, and when the Los Morris Spring marker arrives, it'll be installed on Fort Clark Mud property, not Fort Clark Springs property.
Well, you know, that, like I said, my only question was, or questions were, you know, if we are liable for any kind of expenses on it.
Have I satisfactorily?
Yes, you have. You actually have. And that's why I asked the question. And, you know, if the other question is that if we, by signing this application, are step number one, then that you then have to submit to get approval of the plaque, is that the correct procedure?
Yes.
Or has the plaque been approved and now you're asking for permission to put it
I
up?
thought I already said that I don't do that kind of thing.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure I understand it. Okay, that's fine. And that's why
But I do require and have requested that permission be granted today.
Okay.
Because there is a deadline for these applications of June the 15th to the state of Texas, and then they meet at the end of July, and they tell the recipients, they send an email out statewide to all the applicants, telling them who was accepted and who was rejected.
who installs the marker?
In the past, it's been installed by Fort Clark Springs Maintenance.
I'm just asking. I don't know.
If the state of Texas does not install the marker,
Okay.
they just provide the marker, and the marker belongs to them. Each marker says on it, property of the state of Texas.
Okay.
Bill, I see two different locations there. I don't know if this is,
We
Right.
can hear you.
excuse me. The picture provided here looks like it's two different locations. Yeah, the one is out
Yeah,
here.
the second photograph was taken from over here,
You see, that's,
looking back this way. So it's in the grove of trees.
okay, yeah, this was just on this side of the grove.
Right, those are just general locations, one marker.
Okay.
I must state that without the aggressive research by Chris Hale into this subject, I wouldn't even have considered nominating. This is a nomination. That's what it is. It's a nomination for a marker. And John Horse was ambushed at the cemetery in broad daylight in 1876, correct? May of 1876?
Yes.
And his companion was killed in that ambush. His body wasn't found until 2 days later. And it's appropriate to recognize that individual's prominence in American history as a freedom fighter and as a man of integrity. And we have an opportunity to do that. We may get we may not make the cut. And that's happened in the past with both the 2nd Cavalry Division marker and the Cardinal School marker. We didn't make the cut. But the next year, we're the only county in the state of Texas that's got 2 markers. And they're free. So it's a win-win situation as far as I can see.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Okay,
I move that we give permission to the Texas Historical to place the marker. It's a very interesting story, and because of the Seminole connection, I think it is probably very important to the fort. So I move that we give permission
okay.
to place the marker where it's according to the nomination sheet.
Do I have a second?
I will second it because I want to modify your motion, I guess.
Okay.
I think that we should direct the Director of Operations to sign the application no later than Monday at 11 o'clock. This coming Monday at no later than 11 o'clock. And I would also like to include that the fort, if no one else is available, that the fort maintenance does set the marker when it arrives.
I have no objection to that. It's probably, I don't, how long does it take to set a marker, Mr. Hahn, do you know?
Well, if the Los Morris spring marker is any indication, this wouldn't show up till 2016.
Oh, okay, so not an immediate expense.
No.
something
Well,
we
I'm
can
sure
put
we
in
just
there.
have to probably pour a little 2x2 concrete footing and stick the post in it and hold it level till the concrete dries. It shouldn't be a big project.
Can we put you there to hold the level? No, just kidding. Okay, anyway, we have a motion and a second. Right? All in favor?
No, well, Sandy will
No,
have to.
I will
Okay.
revise my motion.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, I was just assuming that all went together, but maybe
I'm
not.
not gonna be here Monday,
I'll-
so I don't know, he can sign it.
I'll be more specific with my motion that we allow the state to place the marker on Fort Cart property as requested, that if no others are available, that we